Hello DesignTV, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Elissa Black, Executive Director of NYCxDESIGN, a non-profit committed to empowering, supporting and growing this city's incredible design sector. I'm joining you today in celebration of our internationally renowned annual design festival, which is taking place right now through November 18. This festival really celebrates the immense creativity and diversity of New York City's design community, with hundreds of events celebrating design innovation, resilience, creativity, sustainability, and much more. Be sure to check out our festival website at festival.nyxdesign.org so you can be a part of New York City's official celebration of design. And while you're at it, please do mark your calendars for the return of our 10th anniversary festival next year, running from May 10 to 20 in 2022. We hope to see you there. This week during the festival, we're taking over DesignTV by SANDOW to spotlight New York City's thriving design sector through a series of fascinating videos and conversations with local design leaders. So without further ado, please do sit back and enjoy this fascinating exploration of design in New York City's 5 boroughs.
Hi everyone, I'm Valerie Hoffman, Program Director for NYCxDESIGN. In May 2021, we introduced Self-Guided Journeys, an immersive online platform touring some of New York City's most vibrant design districts, uncovering the engine of creativity in every borough. From hidden design gems to creative studios, cultural centers, talented local design studios, and one-of-a-kind architectural feats, you can visit Soho and Tribeca, Southwest Brooklyn, Long Island City, St. George, and the South Bronx at any time. We want to take you to some of these neighborhoods with us today. Before we dive in, here's a warm welcome to NYC from some designers that represent the collective power of our expansive creative community.
The activity of other creative people like doing their thing and trying to like make it happen, like that's home for me.
We made it our duty to represent our people the right way.
It's really about the diversity, it's really about the layers of history.
I really appreciate this location, so many different cultures and so many different backgrounds.
It's a really wide open, wacky range of individuals.
There's such a cross-section of artists and designers and performers.
It's hard not to be inspired by the architecture you're given as the basis of a lot of your design. Amazingly interesting New York bones that only could happen in New York.
Design in New York City in one word: persistent.
Vibrant.
Forward.
Eclectic.
Fearless.
Imagination.
Bold.
Cutting edge.
Exciting.
Fascinating.
Progressive.
Matrix.
Stimulating. Resilient.
True.
It's what it is. It is only in New York City, so you already know. Real.
Now, let's begin our journey. Today we're exploring Long Island City. Located in Queens, a borough rich in cultural diversity, Long Island City is a former manufacturing epicenter that is now home to a variety of design studios, cultural institutions, hip restaurants, and green spaces. Designers flock to its doors because of the strong community connection that radiates throughout the neighborhood. The local design supply chain is rich, and the interest among makers and creatives to collaborate is always present. A visit to Long Island City will inspire your creativity and leave you eager to explore more. Today we'll be visiting a variety of creative destinations, beginning with Krypton Neon, a vibrant studio with an eclectic mix of glass-blowing workstations, high vacuum processing equipment, vintage and modern neon signs, art, and more. We'll then venture to the Stick Bulb showroom, where they create modular LED fixtures by hand using sustainably sourced wood. Then Hunters Point South Park, a multi-layered recreational and cultural destination, followed by Eventscape, an award-winning custom fabrication firm housed in a 20,000 square foot facility. And we'll end with a visit to Tracy, a local ceramicist whose work draws inspiration from the simplicity of prehistoric vessels. Welcome to Long Island City.
I love Long Island City. It feels good and people are here to work.
This was the first neighborhood where I felt that there were working artists in the sense of they had viable commercial careers.
One of the reasons we love working in Long Island City is we have developed a network of fabricators and vendors that we've worked with and have worked with for years now.
I really appreciate this location. So many different cultures and so many different backgrounds.
We think of it as a hidden gem. It's really about the diversity, it's really about the layers of history, and it's really about the proximity to Manhattan.
One word that I can use to describe design in Long Island City: eclectic.
Inclusive.
Persistent.
Diverse.
Community.
Innovative.
Deep.
I'm Kenny Greenberg. We're at Krypton Neon in Long Island City, New York. Krypton Neon was founded in 1981 in Long Island City, and we manufacture neon lighting, signs, special effects. The majority of our clients for years have been Broadway productions. I fell into this in a strange path because I'd sort of always been groomed to be an engineer, but I also really enjoyed art. I enjoyed cartooning and scribbling around, and I was looking for some way to combine the two. Once I learned that human beings made neon, a light went off, no pun intended. I mean, I actually had a history with Long Island City. My father had a consulting job on the weekends here, and one of the things I loved, apart from all the trains that were here in Long Island City, were the neon signs. The big swing line stapler, and of course the Pepsi sign and so on. The transformation of this neighborhood is very interesting. When I first arrived, I used to tell people I lived in the country because it was incredibly rural. One of my favorite things was that there were all these factories that actually had very good relations with all the neighbors and all the people, and I used to pride myself in being able to get any color glass that I needed. Long Island City in the past and today have always been different from the other arts communities. This was the first neighborhood I'd been in where I felt that there were working artists in the sense of that they had viable commercial careers along with their creative careers, which also dovetails with what I do. Now, real estate is just at such a premium. We have no way of knowing what the survival of artists in this neighborhood will be. So I guess it dies and comes back and dies and comes back, which is a lot like neon.
My name is Russell Greenberg.
I am Chris Beardsley.
And we are at Luxe Studios. Luxe was just founded out of curiosity. We're a multidisciplinary team, it's all under one roof. So we have our showroom here, our shop here where we make everything, and this is also the home to our two brands, Stickbulb and Gradual. And each brand has a different mission. Stickbulb is making light out of wood, and it's all about a sustainable practice. You know, we know where all the wood that we use comes from, which very often comes from a demolished water tower right down the street. And Gradual is on a mission to retell time in a way that helps people think more long-term. We started Stickbulb in an incubator called NYCxDESIGN up the road. And when it came time for us to graduate from that program, we were looking for spaces around here. And we walked into this warehouse space and we were just like, whoa.
I remember very well the first time we saw this space. Definitely felt like a diamond in the rough. Total clean slate. It was just floors, walls, and barely a ceiling.
It was absolutely disgusting. It was covered in all kinds of gross stuff. There were buttons smashed into the gaps in the floor and the planks because they must have been using this for textiles. We try as best we can to imbue everything we do with history. And so I think that's one of the reasons why we love working in a space that has history itself and has texture that reveals that history.
One of the reasons we love working in Long Island City is we have developed a network of fabricators and vendors, almost artisans, that we've worked with and have worked with for years now. We also are members of the Long Island City Partnership, which has been a great platform for just getting to know the local business community here. that has opened up a lot of doors, and it's been a way for us to bring people in and to show this community what we do.
We think of it as a hidden gem, one subway stop from Grand Central Station, yet people feel like it's a million miles away, and it has this incredible sort of authentic manufacturing history and texture. It's really about the diversity, it's really about the layers of history, and it's really about the proximity to Manhattan.
Having the space here in Long Island City, it's allowed us to grow our team, grow our business, and actually have a place to invite people in to see the results of what we do and also get a sneak peek at us actually making them.
This showroom, I hope, primes people to appreciate the depth of our work. Hopefully it piques people's interest. They feel like they're surrounded by beautiful, well-crafted things. And that opens them up to hear why we make them, how we make them, and why that's important to us. And hopefully they come away with a piece of that they don't forget.
I'm Casey Chamberlin. I'm the Manager of Programming and Development with Hunters Point Parks Conservancy, and we're here in Hunters Point South Park in Long Island City, Queens. When I joined the Conservancy in 2018, Hunters Point South Park was half the size. Phase 1's very active recreation. It's got a cafe, a dog run, playground, this active turf oval. Whereas Phase 2 here is a lot more nature focused, a lot more winding pathways, like you're kind of stepping out of the city in some ways, and that's an intentional design choice by the designers. This park was done by a collaboration between SWA Balsley and Weissman Freddy. They also had the Arab group doing consulting engineering as well. If you look across at Manhattan, you can kind of see basically the highway is right up against the waterfront. The sea level rise is just like a foot or so. A lot of that's going to be underwater, whereas here we have soft edges that can sort of absorb that. There's these boulders along the edge that are called riprap. It's just loose stone, and it helps raise the park up a little bit, but it also helps prevent erosion. We also have this tidal marsh that it actually floods in with water twice a day with the tides. So again, it's meant to sort of absorb water, and if there was a big storm such as Hurricane Sandy or something along those lines, all the new buildings behind us would be safe. Long Island City was like the hub of maritime activity in New York City back in the 1800s. So the designers like to kind of intentionally call back to that in places. There's, remnants of railroad tracks that are throughout the park in places. There's, old pier that they left there. And the cantilevered overlook, it's, beautiful, sweeping views of New York City, but it also has this appearance of looking like a bow of a ship going out over to the water. The existence of the Hunters Point Parks Conservancy is to keep our community engaged in the park. Fitness classes, cultural programming, artistic programming. The park also welcomes, temporary art pieces. Currently in the park we have a wonderful piece called Floating Woman. It's by French-American sculptor Gaston Lachaise. It was actually cast here in Queens, in Astoria, at the Modern Art Foundry. There's a lot of pride from our group and our neighborhood as well about being from Queens, which is the most diverse urban area in the planet. We've become kind of knit into this waterfront park and waterfront access community. I hope it shows how important the parks and the waterfront are to New York City, and hope that means that people start treating them like an essential infrastructure of the city.
My name is Jennifer Bush, and we are at Eventscape's Long Island City fabrication facility. Our founder, Gareth Brennan, created Eventscape as a one-stop shop for art and architectural fabrication. We bring creative visions for designers and artists to life with advanced technologies. We work in large scale, we work in varying degrees of complexity, and we work with an infinite variety of materials and combinations of materials, which is a real distinctive factor for us. We like to think of ourselves as an architectural toy factory. We are a turnkey resource for creative clients to realize their vision without compromise. Eventscape is 25 years old, and for many years we've had a pretty significant portfolio of projects in New York, so it seemed like a natural progression for us to make a commitment to New York and put down roots here. Our founder chose Long Island City for its vibrant creative culture, the availability of space, and also its really nice proximity to Manhattan, just one subway stop away. So we started out with 10,000 square feet of studio space. Sort of fortuitously, 2 doors down, we also acquired a second 10,000 square feet, which was the old Barney's store window fabrication facility. And not only did we acquire that facility, but we also acquired the staff. So now they're part of the Eventscape team. And we actually think of that as being a really nice sort of evolution and progression for this space. Our clients, when they work with us, are freed from the limits and restraints of traditional building materials and methods. So clients come here to work side by side with us, and they can experiment with materials, they can experiment with robotics, they can test prototypes, they can view mock-ups. When they come here, they're not picking from a catalog, and they're right in the design process with us, and they actually really feel the heat of that process. It's actually very inspiring what happens here.
My name is Tracy Hervey, and we're in Queens in Long Island City. This is my ceramic studio. My first experience with clay was at Greenwich House Pottery in the Village, which is an amazing place. And in graduate school, I did very little ceramics, and it was mostly we were thinking about concepts and not so much about throwing on the wheel. I mean, I pretty much have learned on my own. You know, that's one of the reasons why I love working on the wheel. It's not just about what's in here. There is this thing, me and it, and the clay. You know, and sometimes that relationship can be very contentious. I wanted to make things that I wanted, and sometimes I find like the most difficult thing to find is something that's really simple. I also like the idea of a mason jar. It's like an all-purpose object that can be used for many different things. And so my vessels are just basic cylinders that, you know, they can be tumblers, they can be mugs, they can be vases. It's up to you really what it is. And as it progressed, I've been thinking a lot about how certain forms developed, like mugs. The shape of my handle has transformed over the years. Originally, it was just a semicircle, just because I was thinking about the design. A lot of mugs, like the teacup, it has this curvature that I thought was just a decorative element. But then, you know, when you pick up a mug, it's kind of essential that it does this thing. Lately, I've been thinking a lot more, just not what does it look like, but how does it work? I love Long Island City. It's peaceful, it's quiet, and it feels good, and people are here to work. The people I've met have been critical in helping me get where I am today. Before I moved here, I was about a block away, Tribeca Potters. I mean, I don't think I would be here if it wasn't for being a part of that studio. There are people around who are always making things and making different things, and so there's just a wealth of resources.
Thanks for joining us today on a design-filled journey through Long Island City. If you're in the area, we invite you to visit some of these creative spaces live today from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. You're invited to visit select destinations to hear from the leading voices behind the studios, landmarks, and institutions, and you may even get to experience in-process design demonstrations. Visit festival.nycxdesign.org today to plan your self-guided journeys live experience and to explore all of the events taking place now across the 5 boroughs. And a big thank you to our partners, sponsors, event organizers, and attendees for making this edition of the festival a success.
Hi everyone, I'm Grace Bewley-Hunn. I'm Luxe's Home and Design Editor, and I am here today with Kati Curtis of Kati Curtis Design. Thank you all so much for tuning in. It should be a really, really inspiring conversation today. For those of you who do know the fabulous Miss Kati, lucky you. For those of you who don't, Kati is an interior designer based in New York City, and Kati really does it all, but to me what always stands out about her work is how good it makes you feel on impact. She's just the queen of warm, rich, color-happy, beautiful spaces. And back in September of 2019, Luxe had the honor of publishing one of her homes on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. And it's just such a beautiful project. Again, it's feel-good design, which is the order of the day. So we decided it would be a great time to kind of revisit that project and dig a bit further into the design notes and into the mind of Katie. So Katie, I am coming at you from upstate New York, where I'm quarantined with my parents and my husband. I've turned this unfinished guest bedroom into a makeshift office. Everything is very strange at the moment, but how are you doing? I see you're at your office or somewhere that looks normal. How's everything going on your end?
Well, it's been tough really for everyone in the whole world, right? Fortunately, I live about 4 minutes away from the office. So I'm here in my office today, and I have not been, full disclosure, I've not been coming in every day. My husband and I, who live together, are the only people here. He's our COO. And yeah, it's weird. Everyone's working from home. You see those empty seats behind me, which are breaking my heart right now, but we're staying connected with things like Zoom, and we use Microsoft Teams. So I'm seeing everyone today. It's just in a different light.
Definitely. We're all navigating it together, which is the good part. And I'm loving all the color and happy things happening in your background today. I'm like, this is very sad, disregard. So again, I would really love to revisit this beautiful project, Katie. You know, it was such a fun piece to edit, and every photo is better than the last, and just really excited to get a little deeper here. So kind of to get started, can you take it back? How did this project come into your life? How did these clients come into your life? Kind of, what was the genesis?
So the clients contacted us online, actually, which I think is a kind of an interesting discussion to have right now, because we never met in person initially, which is what we're having to do today. So we were always able to do that with things like Zoom, and we met them through the internet. They live in full-time in South America, and they were fulfilling a 25-year-long dream of having their home away from home in New York City. So we had a few meetings, video calls, and they ended up hiring us. And then we usually do what I call a discovery day with new clients, where we bring them into the studio and we ask them a million questions. We spend a lot of time just digging deep into their likes and dislikes and things like that. And we did that online. And, you know, we just kind of took it from there. And, you know, they would come up occasionally. They had some site meetings with us, but basically we were relying on technology like this to put the entire design together. But they love pattern and color, and they had a lot of interesting, amazing things that they had collected that they wanted us to use in the design. Also, they are in their home in South America a little bit traditional, but they knew that this New York life was going to be a little bit more hip and modern, and they wanted the design to reflect that too. So it was an interesting exercise in marrying some more traditional details, but expressing it in a way that was much more contemporary in New York City.
Definitely. Do you know how they originally found your work?
Online, on the internet. Yeah, just doing a Google search. And you know, we had approved everything. They saw everything before we installed it, you know, at least on paper and in some of those renderings and presentations that we're going to show a little bit later. But you know, we had that big reveal moment when they landed, got off the plane and came to the apartment, and we had the champagne chilling, and they walked in the door, and there were all those happy tears. And that's my favorite. You know, I'm going to cry because I can't do that right now.
Right? Like, it doesn't take much these days. That's great. I was going to ask you about, you know, the ta-da moment and whether it was an e-reveal, if you will, but they were there in person, and it was kind of, how long had it been since they had seen it last?
It had been a couple of months, and I had been taking little videos. There were a couple of detail issues that we had. The building's new construction, but we did find some unexpected things when we were particularly putting in window treatments. We would video things for them and explain, you know, what was happening and why we had to change this or whatever. But the actual reveal, that moment was
after all that time.
Yeah,
I wanted to ask you about, you know, the actual bones of the home when you found it. So this was a new construction building, kind of a white box apartment, right? And obviously, as everyone can see from these beautiful pictures, it looks so layered and lived in and full of history. And that must have been a particularly difficult challenge with those kind of bones to work with. So can you kind of tell me a bit more about generally how you approached that challenge and how you did for this particular home?
Yeah, I mean, that's easy for me. And usually we start with a blank slate. So the white box attributes weren't a big deal. There was a model apartment that we saw. And the great thing was the client liked the basic finishes, but really wanted us to pump it up a notch. And also I mentioned they are used to this more traditional architecture of their home in South America. So they wanted a certain layering and a certain level of detail. There were no crown moldings or anything like that. So we added a custom crown in a little more of a modern stepped design. Actually, I have a piece of it over here I can bring over. So it was just a way to express the layering and the details that they had always expected, but in a new and modern way that was sensitive to the modern architecture of the building itself. And we didn't change the kitchen and the bathrooms, but we did add wallpaper. We added some additional storage. We're going to talk a lot about function and how we, maximize small spaces and things like that. So we did add on, but again, in keeping with the architecture that was already there.
Definitely. Yeah, I kind of, on that note of bringing in all these layers remotely when your clients are halfway across the world, I did want to dig a little bit into the e-design. Obviously it's so timely, but, kind of what that looked like and how this project was maybe a little different from ones where your clients were a little more accessible. And when you were sourcing and presenting items, you'll see, but Katie sent us some very, very thorough, extraordinary renderings and mood boards that really, paint a vivid picture. But can you just tell me a bit about what that process was like? I think that our listeners here today might be very curious to hear about some of the wins of, designing remotely and some of the challenges as well.
Well, I think it's something that we've always done. Most of our clients are not local, so we've always been set up to work that way. However, I feel that it's very important, at least for us here in the office. You'll see we have our presentation tech boards where we mock everything up and we have actual samples of everything. So I think it's important to still see those things. We can communicate a lot digitally. And now, most of the vendors have great very high-res images that we can use to be able to facilitate that presentation. But I think along with that comes, and I've been seeing a lot of people do this, they've been posting on Instagram and things like that the past couple of weeks, we'll put a box together of all of the actual samples and they're labeled and everything says what's going where. So we'll, along with that digital version of the presentation, we'll send the physical samples too, which I still think is so important. And we're going up to the apartment and testing the paint colors in the actual light. And while, again, we can do so much virtually, it's important for someone to be there physically. And that, most of the time is us. But it is important still to have that physical connection. And light is light, and it's going to change. And you just can't, even we're having this great conversation over the internet, but the lighting in here is not exactly what you're seeing on the screen. So I think it's important to remember that there are limitations, but we can do a lot.
Definitely. What was the cadence like on this one? Was it like weekly calls, or was it, as needed by the updates in place? What did that look like as far as kind of like the flow of conversation?
So we have a very specific process and structure that we follow on every project, and that the presentation images that we're going to be showing here, that's our first presentation. So we present everything all at once, which I feel is really, really important, because I need the client to be able to visualize exactly how everything is going to look, instead of showing this is the cocktail table and this is the sofa, this is the window treatment fabric, and this is the rug. It's really important to see everything in context. And along with those renderings too are super helpful. But we have weekly check-ins with the client. We send an update every Friday. It's kind of, our team sort of rolls their eyes every Thursday because we're trying to get it together, but it really helps streamline the process. And it also helps the client feel like they know what's going on. Yeah. And there may be months where we're in construction and, walls are going up, or, not exciting things are happening, like finishes aren't going up, or it's just, drywall and studs. And we want the client to know that even though there's nothing maybe physically to see that's very exciting, there's still a lot of work going on. Definitely. We also work with really, really great general contractors here in New York City, and I think that is key. For instance, one challenge that came up on this project was, again, this was new construction, so you would assume that everything was perfect, when we got occupancy of the apartment so we could do the work. However, we were adding that crown molding that I mentioned earlier.
Right.
And the ceiling height from one end of that big living room to the other was 2 inches off.
Wow.
So we had to level that ceiling. And I remember the client showing up one of the times they were in New York at the site meeting, and I was trying to explain to them, why we had to spend a few $1,000s to level the ceiling and what had happened. And she just looked at me and she said, well, why would they build the building that way?
I wish I knew.
Just never know what you're going to run up against, even when it's new construction. So again, it is important to work with a really great contractor and have a really top-notch team that's going to be able to catch those things, even when it's new construction and you think it's going to be relatively simple.
Definitely. Nice. Well, I really want to get into the color story here. You can't escape this amazing, like, marigold, great room. And I kind of wanted to start in that space. And we're always curious at Luxe, the old chicken or the egg conundrum. Like, did this amazing wallpaper come first and inform the palette? Or did you kind of pick this palette for XYZ reason and that kind of predicated the selections you made? I'd love to kind of start in that room and talk about the color story, if you want to dive in.
So the color story did actually, there's no surprises, it's not shocking. The color story came from that wallpaper in particular. And, we worked with a vendor from Emmental. It was their wallpaper, their design, their colorway. So we didn't even customize it. And it's actually the way that colorway came, which we could customize it and we could make it any color scheme that we wanted to. But I really, really loved, again, the marigold and the blues and the purples. It was also inspired by a piece of tapestry that they had collected from Peru. And it didn't make it into a photo shoot, but we had this tapestry with those colors in it, which was also part of the inspiration. But also the motif of the wallpaper itself was really the genesis of the whole design for me. They live at the foot of the Andes Mountains in South America, so that the faceted pattern of the wallpaper was really my way of bringing their South American life to the United States, specifically to New York City. One thing I didn't know until they told me at that big reveal day is the color scheme was actually exactly the same color scheme they had in their first beach apartment in South America when they first got married 25 years ago, when they said to each other, one day we'll have an apartment in New York City.
That just gave me chills. That's great. Yeah, I mean, again, the color story is so beautiful and it's so unexpected. I know also with that kind of hero piece, that turquoise cabinet against the yellow, that has an interesting story as well, right?
Yeah. Do you know this story? It's a great story.
Let's hear it.
Actually, because there's so much color going on in the wallpaper, you'll notice that with the exception of maybe a side chair and things like that, the rest of the palette is very muted. So we had gone, one of the times they were in New York, we went to the New York Design Center to look at the cabinet itself so they could see it in person. And I like to do that with very key pieces. We don't necessarily go shopping with a client. I like to give a very edited version of important things to see, like upholstery and things like this beautiful parchment covered bar piece. So we went to the New York Design Center to look at it. And in the showroom, there was a console in the front of the showroom in the window. And it was that beautiful teal color. And we had originally specified for that cabinet to be like a natural cream parchment. And all of us collectively, my senior designer, myself, the clients, as soon as we saw that cabinet, we just said, it's gotta be that color. There was no question. It was just like, we all looked at each other and went, why didn't you think of that in the beginning? Does it make sense?
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love that juxtaposition too. It actually is a nice lead into my next question. The color story that dominates a lot of these rooms, they're bold colors, but this apartment feels so calm and soft. And I think that's a really hard thing to do and something you do so beautifully always. And I'd kind of just be curious to hear your approach to getting that balance right when you're doing these tones like vermilion and these like bright aquas. How do you balance that? How do you make it read serene at the same time?
Well, for me, it always has to read serene. I especially now, you know, I've been thinking so much about this idea of home and as a refuge and a sanctuary. And you're right, my work does have a lot of color in it, but it always has to be balanced. And I think that balance might come from kind of a juxtaposition of masculine and feminine, or in the case of this project, the wallpaper was very colorful, but the rest of the items in the room are a more muted palette. It's really just about the basic principle of balance, I think, for me. And there is a softness to it. You'll notice in the embroidered draperies and the tassels and the layering, there's a lot of details there. And I think that helps soften, you know, that wallpaper is faceted, it's very harsh.
Yeah.
If there's nothing soft in the room, the whole room could read, you know, very sort of jarring and harsh, but you're right. It's a very serene, relaxing, beautiful, comforting space. The richness of the colors too, I think, bring a lot to it, just the colors themselves.
Mm-hmm. What are some of your favorite kind of softer moments in that space? Like,
the rug actually is, I don't know how much you can tell just from the photos, and it's hard for me to separate from it because I've been there. So, but the rug itself is this beautiful vintage rug, and it's very soft and it's white and blue. The blue is very calming also, and the upholstery on the sofas is really just soft and luxurious and rich and luxe. And it's funny because this client they have 4 grown children, one of whom just was recently married. So they wanted this apartment to be able to accommodate all of them. It's a 3-bedroom apartment. It's not easy. So we did some fun tricks to be able to accommodate that. But one of my concerns was durability of everything, because if you're gonna have all these people and you're gonna have parties and you're gonna have dinners, there were all these entertaining things they wanted to do. And the dining table actually extends to seat 15 people, you know, trying to incorporate all these elements. I sort of was erring on the side of going a little more durable with things. And the wife, the client, actually pushed me more towards cashmere and silk, and she didn't care. She wanted that warmth, and this was so refreshing to have a client who just really cared more about the feel of things than, you know, whether or not it didn't matter if somebody spilled a glass of wine or a cup of wine.
There's this one shot moving into the master bedroom that really speaks to that. It's this vignette that I love so much. It's this little desk, and you see this gorgeous hand-painted Gracie wallpaper, and then you see this just chunk of the drape, and it's just like this tactile quality, and the embroidery, it really comes across in the image. And that really stuck out to me about this project, just like the quality of all of these textiles. And I wanted to kind of speak about that room a bit too, because I believe the client had a heavier hand in kind of framing that space than in others, right?
Yeah, she did. She actually chose the wallpaper. They had one visit here. We did take a trip to the D&D, and she went on her own, and she came back with that sample, and immediately we just said, that's the master bedroom for sure. But again, it's a very contemporary apartment. So how do you marry what would typically be thought as a traditional chinoiserie into this very contemporary apartment? So there was a lot of kind of mixing and matching things that one might think of as traditional, and using them in a way that's more modern and sensitive to the architecture. And I think we did that really well. One way we did that was with the design of the crown molding and the base molding and some of the things that you might not necessarily notice so much in Luxe magazine and the photos, but add those architectural elements that are really, really important. And even that, the embroidered drapery fabric, it's quite contemporary. So it works really nicely with the traditional paper, but it takes it up a notch and makes it just a little more edgy, and still gives them all the layers and the detailing that they expected from perhaps a more traditional environment that they have at home.
Yeah, definitely. That balance really comes across. It's just such a beautiful room. Another room that I really love is the guest room that has that kind of red and orange and pink color scheme. And, you know, I particularly love it because I myself live in a tiny New York apartment, and it's just amazing how much you packed into that space. Obviously, again, as you said, even when you're in a most fabulous 3-bedroom apartment, space is always at a premium in New York.
Nice.
And when you're packing in visiting children, it gets even crazier. So I'd love to kind of talk about the like sneaky utility moments you wove in throughout. I know that, for example, that daybed has a trundle underneath it. And I think there are another few moments that are really high on the utility. So I'd love to hear about some more of those as well.
Great, for sure. And when I tell you that this room was designed within a half an inch, I am not kidding. It is literally like those beds fit exactly, and we measured it 500 times for that reason. But yeah, they wanted to pack people into this tiny little bedroom, and that's one of my favorite bedrooms because it does have this kind of cocoon, serene quality, but uses colors like red and orange and colors that you think might be more stimulating, but again, they're balanced out with the creams and the softer pinks and peaches that give it that serene quality. There is a daybed that has a trundle in it, and I have a funny story about that too. But we can accommodate 3 people quite easily in that room. But all of the beds are upholstered. We've got tons of pillows in there. I've actually seen this room in use, which was a little mortifying to me because there are a lot of clothes and towels and everything all over the
Clean up your room.
But it's like a big slumber party in there. It's awesome, and that was exactly what it was designed for. So it's great.
Was that the trundle bed story, or is there another trundle bed story?
No, the trundle bed story is that I have a record that we have never had to call the sofa doctor, which if you don't know who the sofa doctor is, it is a company that is brilliant, that's based in New York City, that whenever you are trying to get your sofa into your apartment and it doesn't fit because you didn't measure right or for whatever reason it won't fit in the elevator, they will come and cut your sofa in half and put it back together for you. And I have a perfect record. I've never had to call the sofa doctor. We always measure the freight elevator and the leading up to it's something that I pride myself and my firm on, is that we've never had to call the sofa doctor. So I thought the trundle bed itself was going to be delivered in pieces and the guys would put it together. But it was custom piece that we designed and had made at one of our factories in North Carolina, and it showed up one piece. So we didn't call the sofa doctor, but we did have to disassemble it and then reassemble it again, which was unexpected. And that moment when you think you have all your T's crossed and your I's dotted, and then something happens, but that's the nature of what we do, and we were able to do it, so it was fine. And it functions. It looks beautiful, and you would never know, and the client never knew, but now if they're watching this, they know.
It's all being revealed. Yeah. And I also wanted to ask about the dining room. That dining room table is an entertainer's table, isn't it? It's an amazing piece. Tell us a bit more about it.
It certainly is. And again, one of those tricky things, in that big discovery session that we have at the beginning of the project, and they said, oh, we want to be able to have dinners for 15 people. And I'm kind of thinking, you're in New York City, you're going to be going out. Why do we have to try to squeeze this many people into a small space? But it works really well. It's an Italian company. We bought it from DDC here in the city, and underneath it actually has a hydraulic mechanism, and it has a little handle on it. So you can turn it around, you can expand it. It has a leaf that actually pops up from the bottom, so you don't have to store the leaf anywhere, which is always something we have to contend with in New York. They do have a little bit of storage, but they have a lot of ski equipment and things like that they need the storage for. So everything is contained in this one table. And they do have dinner parties all the time when they're here, because that was also one of those things I was thinking, that's not really gonna happen, but it does. And yeah, super easy, just with the kick of a little button on the bottom, and you pull it out and it extends to seat 15 people. Great.
It's fabulous. So something that designers often ask me when we greenlight their project, which is our Luxe term for accepting a project for publication, is what my favorite room was, like what made me fall in love with the project. And my response is usually different than theirs. So I've started asking designers this in turn. I would love to know what your favorite space is in this home, what you think was the most successful, and maybe a favorite piece as well.
I love this project so much, and it's really hard I saw this on the list of questions and thought, oh, I'm gonna have to decide. But honestly, for me, the great room and that the wallpaper is just magical to me. And I feel so fortunate that we have clients who allow us to take chances and make bold moves like that. So I'm super grateful that they trusted us to be able to create such a bold statement that, just like you said, still feels very serene and creates this amazing sanctuary for them. And there is a Paul Laverne cocktail table. Pictures just do not do this table justice. And when you see the detail and you get up close to it, and also the thing I love about it is it's bronze, so you can put your shoes on it, you can kick your feet up. It's so utilitarian. It's so stunningly beautiful at the same time, and you discover a new detail every time you look at it, even underneath. And the fact that the base of the table, in some environments you wouldn't even be able to see that or experience that, but in this one, as soon as you walk in, because of the nature of the placement of it, from the entry you can see the beautiful base of that table. So it's such a stunning highlight piece for me.
Well, it's all stunning, and I could talk about it all day with you, Katie. Unfortunately, we are now running out of time, but this was just a fabulous escape on this gloomy day, and needed it, exactly. Again, thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom, for lifting our spirits. This is really fun. Thank you all for tuning in to DesignTV, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Katie.
Hello and welcome to Design TV by SANDOW. I'm Lisa Bingham-Dewart and I'm the magazine's Los Angeles, Southern California, and Pacific Northwest Homes editor. Today I am delighted to be joined by Jessica Petrino, who is the editorial director at AJ Madison, who is going to be talking to us about some really exciting developments in the appliance world. So Jessica, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I recently read a really interesting article, and of course I read it, now I can't remember where I read it, and it was, a blur of content these days, but it was talking about how Americans have become better cooks over the years, thanks in part to a lot more information. So everything from blogs to TikToks and obviously cookbooks that can open our eyes to a range of techniques and cuisines and ingredients. And then also there's the proliferation of ingredients. So before you were really limited to what you found in your local supermarket, but with the rise of specialty shops and farmers markets, we're just exposed to a whole new range of options. But I would also argue that the appliances that we have access to now have made us better cooks over the years as well, since they have so much more functionality and allow us to do so many more cool things. So how would you just say that our access to these cutting edge appliances have really made us better at cooking?
So it's so exciting to see the world of home appliances really take off with the breadth of technology that we have available to us today. It's really quite exciting. And this time, the next time you go shopping for a new stove or oven, it's going to be a really different and more exciting experience than before, in part due to just all of the new functionality and customization that technology brings into new home appliances. Really, with Thermador appliances in particular that we're going to be getting into today, this brand really was one of the first to embrace home technology with their proprietary Homeconnect app, and we're sure to talk about that quite a bit as we get into the segment today. But really, it just gives people the opportunity to explore their culinary potential. There are a lot of folks out there that have access to all kinds of different types of food and cuisines that might not have even been available 20 years ago. Our palates are getting so much more advanced and we just have so much more exposure to great foods and ingredients. So having a place where not only can we order those things via takeout, but also learn to expand our culinary skills beyond what we learned, in our younger years and in childhood with our families is really quite special. When it comes to Homeconnect in particular, you can explore up to 90,000 chef-approved recipes with these various app integrations that really walk you through the cooking process step by step. And I'll say furthermore, the appliances as they are today functionally offer some really, really exciting features and innovations. So it's really exciting to get eating in your home kitchen these days.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So we've touched on Homeconnect a little bit, but are there any other developments that Thermador has on the technology front that are really exciting you at this moment?
Absolutely. So Homeconnect is an open source app that is Thermador's way of getting the stove or your oven in communication with the other smart devices in and around your home, whether that is a home automation system or even your Tesla or your Fitbit. There's different ways to be able to integrate the smart technology that you already have in your home with your new appliances. I think one of the most useful integrations is smart speakers. Being able to ask your smart speaker to preheat the oven to 350 degrees while your hands are busy or dirty and you don't want to have to go over to the control panel, it really simplifies an existing process, just making our lives easier. So the Homeconnect app is very, very easy to use. One other thing I love about it is it actually incorporates the product manuals into your smartphone so you can reference them at any time. So there's so many times where you're like digging through your junk drawer or like the boxes in your basement and you're looking for the manual to figure out something about your appliance. And now you have all of this information at your fingertips whenever you need it. So it's really exciting to see Thermador appliances integrated with technology for sure.
Well, I mean, honestly, I would be sold on that idea of having the manual. I just got a new coffee maker and I've already lost the manual. I'm like, where is it? And I suppose I could, Google it, but it's just, that extra step rather than just having it on your phone, you can just find so quickly and easily. So there's some really cool specific products that are all integrated with the home technology that Thermador is offering these days. And one of the things that I wanted to hit on was the Thermador Freedom Induction Cooktops. I am myself new to induction cooking. I'm learning about it, and I know that there's a bit of a learning curve, but it's really exciting and it's really fun, and once you get the hang of it, it's a great option. So I'd love to hear a little bit about what makes Thermador's versions stand out, and what are some of the great benefits of induction cooking these days.
Induction is a fabulous alternative to gas or even traditional radiant electric. And it is for 4 main reasons. 1, it's super fast. So you definitely want to do a little bit of your prep work early if you're new to induction. Make sure to chop those veggies before you start cooking because you're going to be amazed by the results. Induction is also very efficient. It is really safe. And furthermore, it's easy to keep clean. So you're going to enjoy your new kitchen for years to come. We love the Thermador Freedom Induction Cooktop because you can put your pots and pans anywhere on the cooking surface, and you can cook with up to 6 of them at the same time. So you're not limited by your pan's shape or the amount of pans you want to use. 6 is quite a bit. So you'll be able to cook and move things around as you need to, depending on how you like to use your cooktop. Furthermore, there's an integration with select comparable Thermador hoods so that it can activate the hood automatically when you start cooking on the cooking surface.
Oh, that's so great. So you don't actually have to remember to turn on your hood when you start cooking. It just automatically will talk and work it out itself. That's amazing. And I also love that idea of having all of that real estate, because that's the thing with cooktops is that they may take up a lot of room, but you have a finite amount of space that you can actually put your pots and pans on. So the idea that you could move your big stock pot that's simmering off to a different part where you might not have, the same size burner on a, a traditional range is absolutely just like, what a great thing, what a great option. So that's wonderful. So now there's some other cool stuff you've got going on, and the Thermador steam convection oven was intriguing to me. I'm much more of a roaster myself, so can you walk us through a little bit about how that could convert a dedicated roaster into a steam cooking user?
So there are many, many benefits to cooking with steam. And I want to debunk the myth that steam cooking is just for vegetables, because it's not just for vegetables. But the great thing about cooking vegetables or roasting vegetables in a convection steam oven is you can really customize the experience however you want to. But the addition of steam will maintain the nutrients in the food. The moisture level will be there without having to add additional oils or butters or fats. So it's really great for those who are health conscious or trying to eat more healthy. It's also really fantastic for maintaining the original colors of your veggies. So having meals that come out looking beautiful in addition to tasting beautiful. Now there's some other many, many benefits of cooking with steam. So again, not just for veggies, you can do a plethora of things. If you wanted to bake cookies in your steam oven, you don't have to use the steam part. It could be an auxiliary oven to work alongside your main oven. However, adding the steam is going to be really, really fabulous for cakes. It does really well with grains, and doing things like farro, barley, rices come out great. It also, when you're cooking in a steam convection oven, there is no flavor transfer between the different racks. So you have enough capacity there to be able to do like fish, vegetables, and a grain in the same oven at the same time on 3 different racks. And you can make this turn out beautiful. My favorite application for a steam convection oven is actually for reheating. So let's say, for example, you go to a restaurant and you order a half chicken and you don't finish the whole thing, and you want to be able to enjoy this meal the same way that you did the first time. Bring it home. Your steam convection oven will take care of it for you. You'll get that really juicy, moist chicken that you had the first time, but also the convection capabilities of the oven will make the skin crispy again. You're going to love it. It's really the best appliance out there for reheating leftovers, no matter what you throw at it.
That's really exciting. And then last but not least, there is a professional dual fuel range with steam and induction, which just seems like it kind of combines all the best parts of the range into one. So walk us through a little bit about why that's a great fit for someone.
The last time you might have gone shopping for a range, no stove had this much capacity and this much character to it. There's so much from a cook's perspective that you can do. So we talked about the induction technology, right? You have an induction module as part of this range. It really offers the best of all worlds. In particular, you can enjoy the 22,000 BTU gas burners. Thermador's proprietary pedestal star burners are fantastic. They have 56% better pan coverage than a traditional burner. So you can really get even temperature across your whole pots or pans for really even coverage of your food. Really easy to clean. It brings the burner closer to the cooking surface. Furthermore, you have a multi-zone induction module, so you can take advantage of induction cooking and gas cooking in the same stove. This particular range has an electric oven, so you can get really even heating on all the oven racks, the true European convection, and this range comes with a steam convection oven. So you can cook healthy food, reheat leftovers, and really get the most out of a range that can do it all.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jess. This is so exciting. I want to run out and check them out in person. It's wonderful, and it's really inspiring to hear about how you can really elevate your cooking game with some of Thermador's new technologies. So I really appreciate you joining us today on Design TV, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me today. You know, it's really great to be able to talk about all the innovations in cooking technology, especially with Thermador. And if you want to check out these appliances and learn more, definitely visit us at ajmadison.com or visit us in showroom. We have a New York City showroom, one in the DC metro area in Tyson's Corners, and soon to be, we're going to have a showroom in Sunny Isles, Florida.
Thanks so much, Jess.
Thank you.
Welcome to Design Talks Now, the Visionary Series, where we investigate current tones and creative approaches to today's most critical challenges through the lens of design. This visionary series on experience design features an elite group of design leaders commanding the field at its center while exploring the powerful potential of technology-infused design that creates transcendent, multidimensional moments. In 2020, Design Pavilion went virtual to keep the dialogue alive, and Design Talks Now was born. In person for the first time since 2019, Design Talks Now, the Visionary Series, was recorded at Neue House, New York City, in front of an intimate studio audience. Join us now for this deep dive into the magic of immersive design. Let's create memories. Alexander Simeonescu is principal of Float 4, a versatile team of creators producing site-specific interactive multimedia installations with the use of a proprietary real-motion platform that has become the engine powering many of their projects. David Tracy is Director of Technology for the Lab at Rockwell Group, an interdisciplinary firm that emphasizes innovation and thought leadership, creating extraordinary experiences and built environments worldwide. Moderator Paul Keskes is Editor-in-Chief of Architizer. A UK architect and writer based in New York City, Paul specializes in telling stories about the world's best buildings and spaces and celebrating the designers that bring them to life. He has been published in The World's Best Architecture by Phaidon, as well as in Architectural Digest, Pinup Magazine, Aesthetica Magazine, and Public Journal. And now, let's begin.
I'm Editor-in-Chief at Architizer. We're home to the largest database of architectural projects and the largest architectural awards program in the world. My job is to tell stories about innovative architecture and the people that help bring it to life. I'm a recovering architect myself from the UK, and I'm a huge technology nerd as well, all of which means I'm very excited to be moderating this talk and learning from two master storytellers at the cross-section of building design, entertainment, and technology. First, we have David Tracy, Director of Creative Technology at Rockwell Group. David specializes in projects that thoughtfully and beautifully incorporate technology and interaction into their surroundings. He sees technology as an architectural material, an element that shapes our experience of the spaces we inhabit as much as steel and concrete. Through a career that has woven together computer science, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, design, and theory, David brings a broad and balanced set of skills to problem solving for a wide range of design challenges, from prototyping to concept design and architecture, and thrives in collaborative environments. Clients include the Smithsonian Institution, Tao Group, Fisher Brothers, Brookfield Properties, and the National Building Museum. And second, we have Alex. Alex is CEO of Float 4. Alex is at the helm of Float 4's vision and strategy as he continuously fuels award-winning user-driven experiences. Always on the go and perpetually analyzing upcoming industry trends, he spearheads Float 4's creative initiatives. With a background in video game programming and engineering, Alex's work is devoted to exploring the oscillation between technology and art, using his findings to create collective experiences. He has shared his expertise at conferences including the Future of Immersive Leisure Conference, the Society for Experiential Graphic Design Conference, X Labs Speaker Series in New York, ISE, and Technology, Innovation, Design, and Experience. So Alex, what techniques do you use to create memories?
So there's a big parallel between what we do and where we started, being video games. And the notion is that video games required two main ingredients, creativity and technology. And the initial idea when we decided to quit our jobs about 14 years ago was that the technology that we had in video games could serve other purposes. Those purposes are what we do today and what we've been doing for over a decade, is to take that technology and create environments that respond to an audience's presence, whether it's somebody who's traveling, people in an office, or any kind of destination. And you see a few examples in the video that we see here. And this is something that I'd say in the past 5 years has really started to increase in terms of the volume of applications that we can create with it, because any space that welcomes a group of people has a story to tell. And so what we do in the end is take a space, take an audience, a message, and use technology to bring those three elements together. And that's what we do at Float 4. You know, the long and short of it is essentially taking environments and amplifying the identity of an environment through what I just described. Some of the examples that you see here are among many, and some of them that we actually collaborated on without even knowing it. The Guitar Hotel is a great example of that. David's crew worked on the Oculus, basically the main entrance of this guitar-shaped hotel. But the size, the shape of every experience that we do varies based on the audience, based on the message, based on the shape or the space. And that's one of the big differences compared to what we've been used to see digital content through, which is established formats. If you look at how we consume digital media these days, it's typically through a very specific medium, whether it's your mobile phone, whether it's a tablet, whether it's your television. But today and in the future, more and more, we're going to have this digital media being embedded in the spaces that we occupy. And it's really a shift in the way that we approach the content production, the way that we design all of these experiences. So if I have to make a comparison with video games, what you're seeing today is the equivalent of Pac-Man. So there's still so much more to do. Like I was mentioning, you know, three main ingredients, and what we do is to bring those three elements together: people, place, and story. And that's somewhat of the backdrop of what we're going to talk about today. So a few examples of this you can actually go and see right here in New York City, the One World Observatory. We completed this over the lockdown, which was kind of an interesting challenge to decentralize our production, which typically happens in studios. So having everybody working from home. But these are some examples that show how we're starting to embed digital media into these spaces.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of words and terms that we use to describe our work that we share. And I think this is becoming part of the kind of design vernacular for experiences and memorable design. I think we're going to see increasingly a lot of parallels between a few studios here in New York and throughout the world when it comes to kind of interactive spatial media. The lab is a small kind of specialized studio within Rockwell Group. It has a long lineage of creating spectacular experiences, both in the permanent built environment, but also for stage and theater. Our studio has this kind of DNA in hospitality design. And we sometimes say that hospitality design is like the OG experience design, because it's really about kind of embedding people in another world and kind of creating a backstory and really providing moments of spectacle and surprise. And we have an eclectic group of talents ranging from architecture, technology, and storytelling. I myself too am a recovering architect, but I find myself still very much drawn to the built environment. It's something I'm very much still passionate about. We started as a real R&D studio about 12, 13 years ago, literally experimenting how emerging technology can be applied in interesting ways in the built environment. We create technology that invites participation. This is all anchored by this love for drama, the actual love of telling stories, embedding our spaces with meaningful narratives. And so a few of those approaches that we use and how they relate to drama are through things like audience engagement, world building, really embedding our spaces with a journey, and oftentimes that's facilitated through technology, creating a sense of dynamism and impermanence, things that are always changing and evolving. This is a subset of ways we approach our project work. So whether it's as a conversation starter, using architecture to tell stories, creating ambient layered experiences through audio and second screen experiences, choreographed architectural spectacles, and getting into more immersive interactive shows with Illuminarium and Journey to Edge as we really look at how media and technology can be thoughtfully incorporated into architecture. This is called Bloom, and it's this constantly evolving zero gravity bouquet of flowers that bloom and grow as people walk past. This is built with tools that are used to make video games. This also incorporates kind of integrated sensors, so cameras that are monitoring where people are in the space to kind of understand how people are moving and where they are. But also the platform itself becomes something that's really tightly integrated into the architecture, detailed so that it feels like it's part of the building. And also incorporated, and there are these like little slivers of content in the desk itself. It's a platform that we're continuing to expand as a way to invite participation, create kind of a dialogue between the public space and the private space, but also to kind of create a sense of kind of drama in the everyday.
I'm curious, in a context like this, were you involved in designing the screen itself as well, or like the proportions of the screen and all that? Or one of the calls that we occasionally get is, we bought a big screen. What do we do with it now?
One of the great affordances of being an architecture studio and a creative technology studio is that we can start to steer some of these things. And so I think it's really important to have a notion, even if it is something like this, where it's really just it's a massive format display, still a notion for tight integration into the architecture and a consideration for what that means for content and interactivity is really important. So sometimes I feel like we're spoiled because we get these opportunities to kind of steer the physical form of the platform instead of inheriting like a giant screen.
A lot of times when you look at the content that we're going to produce, I don't think people realize how much work and thought goes into what's actually outside of the screen, how people perceive the display when, or the digital media as they walk into the space, which is one of the big differences compared to how you approach digital content on any other platform, where the engagement with that platform is typically pretty voluntary. You take your phone out, you unlock it, you go on Facebook or whatever, or you turn on your television, you turn on Netflix, you've decided to do that. But how you need to guide people through a space when, they don't necessarily understand what the experience is, if there's an experience that is, interactive in some way, shape, or form. And that's one of the parts that I find is such a fun challenge, to get people to do what you want them to do, but in a nice way, using human intuition. And that leads a lot of discussions into, all right, how does their brain work? And what are some of the reflexes that we have had for thousands of years? And I think one of those things is the ability to leave our mark on a space. But that's one of the things that these installations allow people to do, the audience that visits this space. It's an opportunity for them to leave their mark on the space. And that's when you create that sense of ownership. And that's when they go, oh, I'm now part of this space. The human aspect that is in so many cases extremely unpredictable. And, you go through hours of design, and you're like, all right, that's how it's supposed to work. And then you put people in the space and you see how they behave. And inevitably you'll go like, yeah, I didn't see that one coming.
I think that with this type of design work, especially when it comes to designing around interactions in space, there's no well-established like vernacular of things people do in space. When we take our phone out of our pockets and we know to swipe up and tap and kind of expand, when we break out of the flatland and really get into spatial interactions, there's a whole separate set of dynamics. With almost every project, there are big surprises and sometimes really beautiful serendipitous discoveries.
To see how people use the tool and to have those results that you didn't expect, but that really, make the experience unique for that visitor because they use it in a way that you hadn't even accounted for. And you're like, huh, all right.
Yeah. I have my kids user test things all the time because they're very good at figuring out how to
break it.
How to break it. Yeah.
Given the complex combination of art and media and architecture and technology, what does the makeup of your team look like? And how do you work together to make a digital experience come to fruition?
For our team, so we have our 3 verticals: space, which is like architecture and design; story, which is like strategy, concept, and technology. We don't operate in silos. We all very much cross those boundaries. We all speak the same language now. So the kind of architectural vocabulary has cross-pollinated with the tech vocabulary and the strategy vocabulary. There are fantastic opportunities for us all to really learn from each other and kind of enrich our process by collaborating with one another.
I think one of the things that's really interesting in our field is that there's not a blueprint for the kind of teams that you need to put together. We're at the beginning of how these groups of skill sets are starting to work together and sort of sync up on the methodologies, sync up on the vocabulary. You think about 100 years ago when they started making movies, right? Now making movies is a very, very specific workflow. We're sort of at that stage where we're starting to define those workflows and standardizing things. Essentially, the creative director has the role of making sure that, the outcome of all the decisions that are made result in the experience that we want and that they're designing. They work in conjunction with a producer that makes sure that it stays within timeline, scope, and budget. Those 2 people will work together and sometimes butt heads to go like, we need this, and then we can't afford it, and then figure out another solution. But from a supervisory standpoint, all of that needs to culminate to something that results into a unique experience, and that's the role of the creative director. And also, I think one of the important roles for us, given that this is a new field, is to educate clients. And a lot of times, like we'll get a request for, we want a big interactive wall, and we take a step back and we go like, why do you want an interactive wall? Well, I saw one that was really cool. And the reason why we take that step back is what you really want is that reaction from your audience to go like, I saw something really cool and I want to tell my colleagues, my friends, my network about it. That's the outcome that you want. Working with clients to build the trust, to bring them to places they've never been before, is part of our role as well.
Our clients, particularly over the last few years, have really become increasingly savvy to this type of work and understand that it's, in addition to this being kind of a separate niche within the kind of architectural design world, there are many parallel paths that run, whether it's through content development, software development, hardware, etc. In our studio, it really depends on the type of project. I direct the technology group. We have a creative director who sits on the space side, and then we have a director of story that sits on the kind of story and strategy side. Oftentimes it depends on what the first step into a project is. If we're doing a project that's really being led by the interaction and the technology, I may have a certain amount of control over the design direction. We do oftentimes have a pretty open dialogue and kind of feedback, critique mechanisms in the studio. And so there's constant evaluation by the rest of the team, by the other directors. But oftentimes the first step into our projects either start with like, what is the story we're trying to tell? So we may meet with you and you have a new project and there's a specific story that you're trying to tell or that you want to express through your space. The first part of the project might be defining what the beats of that story are. Now, when it comes to developing visuals and kind of crafting a space that fits that story, there's going to be oversight from kind of our architecture side. There's going to be oversight from the story side on like art direction. And then there's going to be oversight from the technology side. Really, it depends on what our first step into a project is.
Technology is part of the solution of what we're accomplishing when we create a project. I've seen many instances where it's, I don't want to say decoy, but it detracts a lot of attention because I think people find reassurance in saying, oh, this is the latest technology, so it's going to guarantee that the project is going to be awesome. And I think this kind of comes from the fact that we're used to, oh, the latest iPhone is out, so I have the latest one, so, I'm on top of the world. And that's part of the challenge to help guide our clients when we're really developing an experience. We're not just integrating technology in space. The question that we ask to kind of see like what kind of profile of project we're dealing with is simply asking one question and then asking the client to answer it in 20 words is, what do you want people to remember? If we see that there's diverging responses within, on the client side, like, okay, we need to, address this a little more. Both avenues in either of those categories can be a valid one. And you need to go back to what's the mission? What are we trying to accomplish? And that's the role of that overarching narrative. I consider, the storytelling portion of it on two levels. One is as a tool to get the creative teams and really everybody to go in the same direction. And then you have the narrative that you want to be the takeaway for the audience. It sounds cliche, but it goes back to the story. What do you want people to remember out of this? I think it's really important that that is clear for everyone from the get-go.
How much consideration do you give to inclusivity from an accessibility perspective?
That's a really important question, and one that we are encountering a lot now that I think in part because of the pandemic, we're seeing a lot more like gestural interfaces. And yeah, it's really important to make sure that we are designing for inclusivity. There have been projects that we've worked on over the last year that involve pretty complicated kind of gestural choreography, and we've really had to kind of simplify and distill what is the core of the interaction and what is the story we're trying to tell, so that it's open to as many people as possible. I think Luminaries is a fantastic example of how we look at inviting participation and not just interfacing with a vertical surface that's set into an architectural backbone. I think at the most basic level, it's like looking at how we break out of that 2D world, how do we start bringing content three-dimensionally across a canvas as space makers and place makers. I think in most cases, that's what we're always challenging ourselves and our clients to do. I think some other examples of that when it comes to kind of like spatialized storytelling is like really just kind of novel applications of media lighting into unconventional architectural surfaces. And then also getting into projects that map content and lighting across very non-traditional surfaces like this at the Town nightclub, the Kuan Yin sculpture. Even breaking out into things that include more like ambient soundscapes, augmented reality. These types of activations for us really support a story that's trying to be told, not just using technology for the sake of technology. Even starting to break into fully immersive spectacles like this project that we just launched in Atlanta for Illuminarium, where we're kind of creating fully digital environments that wrap every surface in a space.
What I've seen more and more, because the field that we're in is becoming, expanding, the tools are also becoming more accessible for people to bring their ideas to life. Once the tools become more mature, you're seeing a field become, start to explode. Like think about 5 years ago. An aerial shoot would easily cost over $100,000. Today, you can do that for $5,000. I mean, not for every shot, but the accessibility that new tools and technologies bring just makes it a lot more accessible for artists to bring their ideas to life. So I think that's one of the things that's really exciting about what's happening right now is the accessibility of technology is increasing to make it so that artists use it more and more. One of the approaches that I take with architects is because architects know so much about materials that they put in their space, but there's still sort of this thought of, okay, digital media is something that I have to hang on the wall. So what I tell them a lot of times is think of digital media like a material. Today, you can pretty much shape it any way you want. It doesn't need to be rectangular. It doesn't need to be flat. It doesn't need to be on the wall. So just think of it in terms of, almost like where would you put wallpaper or something like that, but there's a material that emits light that can, react to people's presence, and you can shape it any way you want. We have a set expectation when we say digital media and just the word pixels, we think, oh, it's a screen. Ultimately, what we want to do is create a space that responds to people's presence. Pixels are just the fastest route that we have right now because, there's a lot of tools that allow us to produce content in that medium. But, kinetic sculptures are also a way to do it. Or, having digital media that disappears when it's not in use. One of the things that we really insist on is whenever we put digital media in a space, the screen never, ever goes dark. If we need to transition between two pieces, there needs to be an interstitial content piece that is essentially like the curtains. It'll allow to have an elegant transition because the moment that thing turns, black, to transition between one content piece to the next, it becomes a screen. From an architectural standpoint, I think, thinking of digital media as a material that you can shape and a material that is responsive really opens up the ideas basically on how you can apply it.
I wonder if there's space maybe into the future for this kind of technology to be used in other architectural typologies like schools, for example?
We have a few projects that we've done that have been specifically geared toward education. So we did a few activations for the National Building Museum in Washington, D.C. a number of years ago that were really about inviting play and stoking imagination. And we've done other projects for like the Lurie Children's Hospital. I guess it remains to be seen in the coming years the role that augmented and mixed reality play in the built environment and the way that kind of technology gets implemented beyond just, public commercial world. There's certainly a lot of money going into it.
When did you start kind of delving in? I think it's early 2000s maybe that you started to delve into this kind of emerging discipline. And I'm curious to know how much has changed from the moment you started to now.
The biggest change that I've seen is just in terms of the tools. We used to code everything by hand. The accessibility, it's just so much more accessible to do these things than it used to be. That's part of the nature of technology in general.
I started practicing architecture in 2007. This was right around the time when there were these emerging parametric design tools using the logic of code and algorithms to build flexible design systems. And the approach really struck me. I also had the luxury of being able to work on big architecture projects, master planning projects, interiors projects, and furniture design projects. And so I was kind of bouncing between these disciplines, but using a similar set of tools. I decided to kind of pivot my career, and I kind of moved into creative technology and kind of went for it. And so as recent as like 2 years ago, there have been so many changes with the tools we use in our studio and the kind of tools that have kind of bubbled to the top. But I really think in terms of like in the design world, I think we're going to continue to see techniques used in the video game industry continue to feed back on the architectural design process, not just through visualization and the way that we like look at our projects, but how we design around projects, how we evaluate our design decisions.
Yeah, game engines are initially built to create an environment that you evolve in through your game, but there's so many tools in there that you can use to just simulate how people would react in a space that you're designing. So there's a lot of tools that are out there that have been built for other purposes, but that can be very useful to solve problems. And that's what I find fascinating, is that a lot of solutions are already there. It's just connecting the dots. You don't need to reinvent. There's a lot we can do with what's already out there.
How do you keep technology in a permanent installation relevant over a long period of time?
Well, the role of design is to keep technology relevant, and that's, through the content that you create. But it is a challenge because more often than not, where you're talking about, larger scale projects that have, let's say, over 12-month cycle, the technology can change quite a bit. We're working on a project right now where it's an airport project, and the delivery will take place somewhere in the first quarter of 2022. And, the systems that were specified over a year ago, you have to build with those and create with those and work within those constraints. And it's just part of the nature of the job, because you sort of need to see where it's going to land 2 years from now based on where you're at. And sometimes you have the ability to make a change in the technology to adapt for that. And what I see more and more happening is that they're actually integrating those revisions in the way that the projects are built to account for that. So that's a smart way of doing it, because technology by nature just changes really, really fast. So that's one thing. And the other is keeping yourself up to speed with everything that's going on in terms of the development. So keeping close ties with the manufacturers to see what they have coming up, and being able to sort of see where that lands when you're going to need it. So it's an imperfect science, but just got to deal with it.
We don't consider technology just as this like bundled up thing. We look at design that includes like the platform, which for us physically, whatever the platform is, has to be a beautiful design that kind of transcends like what is hot right now. And so I think that goes a little bit back to this notion of kind of having like a really architectural consideration for technology, and like treating architecture almost as part of the palette of the space, and really thoughtfully detailing it, incorporating it, and treating it as a spatialized element, not just something that gets, hung on the wall. There's the platform, and then there's what appears on the platform, whether that's through lighting or interactivity. For us, it's always important that we have flexibility in the content that shows up on that platform. This is a project that we did the spatial design. We did the initial system design and software development, and we seeded it with like probably 6 content pieces. And then we opened it up as a platform. So it becomes this living, evolving system that invites content from artists and other designers. So it changes over time. And I think that's a big part of keeping things fresh, is giving it that adaptability to change. And whether that's through, seasonal updates, or, whether there's like a constantly refreshing, playlist, for lack of a better term. That's an approach we take to kind of make sure that the things we put out into the world stay relevant and flexible.
Thank you so much to David and to Alex.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you'll return for the next session of the Visionary series on Experience Design. Please stay tuned.
Architecture for workplace shouldn't be based on fashion or style. They're not decorative decisions.
The bottom line is, how can we make someone work better?
We start off by saying we want to make a meaningful space for you. The architecture is going to perform a task and help bring you somewhere. So the best architecture is going to come from the best information.
If you look at all the people getting off the subways between 8 and 9, they're not going to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. They're going to their workplace.
When we came into this work in 95, 96, you really didn't see a lot of architects spending a lot of time thinking about what these workplaces could feel like, what kinds of emotions they could elicit in the users, how you could benefit large groups of people. I think a lot of people see this now.
Well, now you look really smart.
Yeah, we're really lucky.
Yeah, right? Wow.
Welcome to your office.
This is so beautiful, you guys.
It's crazy, right?
I would look at the space and say hospitality.
Right, yeah. So we do hospitality design, don't we?
Yeah, you do.
We just, it's a new word for a workplace.
Yeah, exactly.
When we worked on Squarespace, Anthony Castellino has a really special relationship to design. I mean, the tagline of their company is "Build It Beautiful."
I think it's an expression of our values. Google has more of a playful feel. Facebook is like more of an unfinished sort of thing. But we've always believed in the power of design and what it can do both, for our product and actually for our customers.
Perfect. We needed to come up with architectural solutions that would allow for focus of a very intense nature, but also the ability to be peeled away from that focus. What we came up with is a sort of concentric model, favoring the light and the perimeter for the working focus, and then having this core, this black mass that rises up through the building, going into that darker space. We're going to solve a problem, and then we're going to re-emerge to the light.
It's not only 2 different spaces, but it's 2 different kind of work modes.
And this is what you do best, too, right?
Yeah,
it's like
layers and levels.
Yeah.
And
Create spaces for parties.
Right.
Create spaces for people.
We were for so many years like the underdog of workplace. We were coming at it from a completely different understanding of how you can increase performance. Our name is not Zismore and Folger, it was architecture plus information. We value something that's more connected to you as a client.
How do you get the information that you need?
First we figure out who the hell you are. Then we figure out where the hell you're going.
What are your problems?
Yeah, and what are your
issues?
Values? What do you care about in the world? So we ask questions they don't expect, like, what's your favorite hotel to stay in and why?
Where do you have arguments in the office?
Have you seen Hamilton? No.
It's like a crime movie, right? We're in a crime movie, and you know, of course the butler did it. And we're like, no, actually, if you look at the data, the butler didn't do it. It was the cook. We love to kind of go, you think you know everything about your office. There are 5 things that we're going to tell you at the end of this process that are going to surprise you.
Completely blow your mind,
Yes.
right?
I think they probably interviewed 70 or 80 or 100 people within my company about what would you like to see in your new home and how would that feel?
You have these executives who are committed to transformation.
In the end, they walk their architectural project and can talk about the mission of their company through the architecture. We call it like walking the mission statement. Those are the best projects.
We went from 80% office, 20% open, to 80% open, 20% office. That's a pretty big cultural change in terms of people's perception of how they're going to work. It's basically, we're all in this together. Our space finally represented who we were.
This is the treehouse.
This is the tree house. We're finding opportunities sectionally. Everybody feels kind of connected, right?
Yeah, but there's a porch.
Let's go. Yeah, you have the ability to address the group.
It's like the Pope.
It's papal.
Yeah.
It's very papal.
All right, so we're sitting amongst the pussy willows.
I don't know that's what they're called.
We would design these spaces with these clean surfaces, and then day 2, a ficus plant would show up and somebody's fern would show up. And so one of the beginning goals here was how can we integrate botanicals in a way that supports the architecture and in some cases even provide some functionality to it.
Okay, what does Brad give you?
That's easy.
Hives. Just kidding.
The biggest thing is humor, obviously.
I like this section.
Yeah, can we just devote
Can
the
we
whole
just do
thing?
this?
Yeah, we'll just, I know where his buttons are too.
He does.
Our partnership has lasted 20 years because of how we treat people, how we think about commitment. You know, there's so many things.
Values. We share really similar
So
values.
what does DAG give you?
One of my favorite stories is we had done that first project I told you about, and it was met with great fanfare. The director of the entire company just tore it apart. And DAG reminded me, well, that's what it's going to be like if we try to tweak models.
You know, whether you're doing art or music or architecture, people are always going to say, no, that's not the way, you know, I heard it before.
Okay, where the heck are we?
Welcome to the future of workplace.
What we're trying to do is bring smaller companies here that their workforce lives in Brooklyn. So this will all be this development that is both retail and commercial.
This building is ours not to ruin, right?
Yeah, look at this. This is fantastic.
More than anything, it's about building a community.
Well, that's the way we do it in Bushwick. Retail is no different than workplace, right? At the base of all of this is interaction. So we're taking all of these things that we've learned and we're kind of extending that out of the workplace into the building itself.
You want to learn about this stair?
Are you kidding? Yes, this is incredible.
Well, it's the largest commercial building in the country,
Yes.
except for the Pentagon. We did the stairs, we reimagined the food hall on the second floor. It's all the retail spaces on the first and second floor.
Oh my God, this is just so magical.
The public parts of offices need to catch up to what architects and designers are doing inside the leasehold.
Brad and I are just show folk, really, who want to tell a story. And the entire office is a storytelling device.
The story here is that iHeartMedia really rules the airwaves throughout the country. It has the most radio stations, and we took that concept and we brought it to a physical architectural expression.
Bob Pittman's marching orders were very clear. He said, I want people to walk in the door, and I want them to get it in 5 seconds.
The idea is that you're walking across the radio dial. You're going in and out. And so literally, we're walking your mission statement.
We knew we were creating something in Manhattan, but we also had a sense that we were putting together the design DNA for the entire company.
And that's really, I think that's the key to the new workplace, is trying to connect the employees with the excitement that they're creating in the world.
I think if you asked us, what's the best project that we ever created, honestly, it's our office. Yeah. It's such a power center.
We know, even in the 20 years that we've been doing this, what it means to work has changed so much. And we believe in the power of design to change behavior, to make the world a better place in which to ply your craft.
Space can change behavior, like Brad's saying, for the better and also for the worse. And we think, so choose...
Choose better.
Yeah, choose better, exactly.